The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
I'm back, and you're back in the lab room. Welcome. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me again. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday, as I did. It is the evening. I did get a chance to watch one of the teams that I'm going to speak with you about today. And this has been a long trek on these two-a-days to get through all 32 teams in the National Football League. And there was preseason football tonight. I watched the Carolina Panthers as they took on the Miami Dolphins. Saw a little bit of Ryan Tannehill. Wasn't as impressive as he was in the first preseason game. He got his first start. You know, he didn't look as sharp. Had chances to make plays and didn't. But it happens. It's the preseason. He's a rookie. Those things are going to happen. Ultimately, I think Matt Moore is going to start for the Miami Dolphins. And he should start for the Miami Dolphins. I looked at the Panthers. They didn't have a great first preseason game. They looked a lot better. And it's not hard to look a lot better against the Miami Dolphins, but they did look a lot better either way. Doesn't matter who the competition is. You need to go out and execute, and that's what the Carolina Panthers did. And they're going to be the first team that we start off talking about on these lab reports. The Carolina Panthers. You think Carolina Panthers, and the first person you think about is Cam. Oh, Cam. Cam, jam for me now. Cam Newton. Did he burst on the NFL scene or what last year? The NFL was dying, gasping for air. And Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers were that breath of fresh air that the NFL desperately needed last year. After coming off of a lockout in the offseason, the NFL was looking for some air. They needed to breathe. Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers offense was a breath of fresh air for the league. How refreshing was he to see perform last year? And I got to tell you, a lot of people were doubting Cam Newton coming into the league. They didn't know if his skill set would translate to the National Football League. I'm here to tell you that he was one of the greatest dual threats we've ever seen in this league in his rookie season. And that's what made what he did so special, so amazing. The fact that he was able to do this in his rookie season goes without saying. His ability to not only be a threat to run the football as a quarterback, but to be able to throw the football as effectively as he did last year. I raised my hand. I'm guilty. I did not think he could come in the league and pass the football with such efficiency like he did last year. He threw for over 4,000 yards. You have veteran quarterbacks who haven't even sniffed 4,000 yards. He came in and lit it up. Lit the league on fire last year. Passing the ball. Now, we didn't even get into how he electrified us with his legs last year. This man was amazing. He did it all for the Carolina Panthers. He is the face of the Carolina Panthers franchise. And I'm going to tell you what, I am a Cam Newton fan. He is must-see TV. I can't wait to watch Cam Newton this year and the Carolina Panthers. They were exciting to watch. That guy is amazing. What he did last year, over 4,000 yards passing, 60% completion percentage from a rookie. You know, he threw for over 20 touchdowns. He was magnificent last year. He was magnificent. Nothing short of just amazing. Simply amazing. And Cam Newton is going to be a force in this league. Let's hope that he doesn't suffer from a sophomore slump. but he is a strength for the Carolina Panthers in only his first year in the league. That's amazing to think that he's already a strength of that team, but that's how good he was in his rookie campaign. You look, and the guy he was throwing a football to is a strength for the Carolina Panthers. Steve Smith, when he's healthy, when he's right mentally, he's one of the best receivers in the National Football League. Steve Smith can flat out get it done, and there's not a lot of guys that can cover him one-on-one in this league. He's explosive, he's dynamic, and for his stature, he gets yards after the catch like no one else in this league. And so Steve Smith, again, was rejuvenated by Cam Newton's presence and his exuberance that he brought to that Carolina Panthers offense. Steve Smith had went through a little period where I don't know if he really wanted to play football. It wasn't fun anymore. He went through a few seasons where the Carolina Panthers were inept on offense. They didn't have a good quarterback situation, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. It wasn't a fun situation in Carolina, and I think he thought about hanging it up for a period of time there. But instead, he hung in there, he stuck it through, and now he's been rewarded with Cam Newton in his lap, and he produced last year, and he went to the Pro Bowl. And so Steve Smith, again, is a strength for the Carolina Panthers. Now, you flip side to their weaknesses, and as good and as electrifying and dynamic as that offense was, the defense was that bad last year. Okay, the defense was the Achilles heels of this Carolina Panthers football team. Now, looking at that offense, this was a 10-win team last year. If you just took the offense and if the defense just played at medium level, if they just played middle of the pack football, this is a 10-win football team. The offense played good enough to win double-digit games. However, the defense was so bad that the Panthers were only able to scrape through with a 5-11 record a year ago, or 6-10 record a year ago. And so the defense has to improve. And they have to improve in a number of areas. They were bad on defense in just about every category you could imagine. I want to give you a list of categories that these guys suffered in. And I'm going to start with 24th ranked against the pass. They were 25th against the run. They were 28th in total defense. And this is the killer. I'm big on how many points you give up per game. That's my thing for defense. That's how I gauge a defense. They were 26th in the league, giving up 26.8 points a game last year. And so you can't win many games in the NFL like that, especially when your defense is giving up that many points. The Panthers' offense was always constantly looking to outscore teams. And when you're a young offense like they were last year, you're going to make mistakes, especially when you're headed up by a rookie quarterback. You can't always outscore everyone. They did their best, but they couldn't do it at all times. And so that defense has to be better. They were a glaring weakness for the Carolina Panthers in the 2011 season. As we move on to camp battles, the Carolina Panthers have quite a bit of camp battles going on in their training camp this year. And for good reason. When you're 6-10, you ought to have positional battles going on, pushing guys to make them better, to earn their spot, or to give another guy a chance who deserves that chance. So let's see what kind of battles that they have going on. You start, and their corner situation is where you start at, and they have a starting corner position open across from Chris Gamble, and they let Richard Marshall go in free agency last year. And so that starting corner position is up, and they got a couple of young guys battling for this position. You look, and they have Brandon Hogan, a corner that they like a lot out of West Virginia, and he's battling with Josh Norman, another young corner. Brandon Hogan is a second-year man. Josh Norman is a rookie that's battling out of Coastal Carolina, and so these two are going to go after this corner position, and both of them have started a preseason game already. I watched the game last night against the Dolphins. Hogan looked pretty good. They didn't really complete any passes on his side. They didn't really try a lot of passes on his side. And from what I've seen, his coverage looked pretty decent. And so this is going to go down to the wire. Whoever is going to start here is going to go down to the wire. It's going to be interesting. They both started a preseason game. Look to see who starts in that third preseason game. That's going to be interesting, and that's going to be telling who the Panthers and Ron Rivera are leaning towards in starting that at that corner position. You move on, And they have the nickel cornerback position. This secondary was terrible last year. As I told you already, they were ranked 24th against the pass. So they have a lot of improvements to make in that secondary. And so the nickel corner spot is available. Captain Munderland, who saw starting time last year, he was pushed out of that starting role. They really weren't happy with what he brought to the table last year. And so Captain Munderland is now fighting for the nickel position. And he's fighting with Darius Butler, the ex-New England Patriot, and I don't know, he's going to be pushed for it, but I like Captain Munderland to win that corner position and solidify that nickel spot. You move on, and they had, and I told you the secondary was a mess last year, and so they have a positional battle at the free safety spot. It's between Haruki Nakamura and Sherrod Martin, the incumbent safety from last year. And Sherrod Martin was inconsistent, a guy that they really couldn't trust back there, that missed a lot of tackles, gambled, and gave up a lot of big plays in the passing game. And so Haruki Nakamura over from the Ravens is going to be a guy that they like a lot. And he started the first 2 preseason games, and he seems to be comfortable in Ron Rivera's defense. And I think that he's going to get the starting nod, and Sherrod Martin is just going to be providing depth at this point. And if someone goes down, he'll be the one to step in their absence. But I think Nakamura has this spot locked up if he continues to play the football that he has in the first 2 preseason games and doesn't get injured. Also, there's a slot position open at the wide receiver spot, and it's between Louis Murphy and Siyi Ajayi-Tutu. And I really think Louis Murphy has a stranglehold on this. He has performed well for the Panthers since coming in over in a trade with the Raiders. He's looked good in these preseason games. He looked good again last night. Had a good run on a reverse. Had a couple of catches. He's getting yards after the catch. He looks ready and poised to help contribute to the Panthers offense in 2012. Ajayi-Tutu struggled last night. Dropped a couple of passes. He didn't look fluid in that offense, and so he didn't help himself in the quest to become the third receiver on the depth chart. And so he's got a long uphill battle to climb to get that third position, but he still has 2 preseason games to go to redeem himself. And so again, if he can find a way to perform well in those last 2 preseason games and Louis Murphy stumbles, maybe Ajayi-Tutu can find a way to get in there. But right now, it's looking like Louis Murphy all the way. You move on to the rookie watch, and the Panthers did a great job at the top of their draft of addressing needs. And when you're a team that's 6-10 and looking to get over the hump because your offense is so good, you have a lot of issues along your defensive line. Along your defensive unit. Period. You need to address those issues and clean up any other spaces that you see fit. And I thought the Panthers did a good job of that with the limited amount of picks that they had in the draft. Their first round selection was the linebacker Luke Kuechly out of Boston College. And Kuechly is a guy that he's come in and he's electrified the Panthers and made plays against the Texans. He forced a beautiful fumble on Arian Foster on his only carry of the game. I mean, that's textbook. That's the way you draw it up if you're a linebackers coach or a defensive coordinator. He had a beautiful stop down by the goal line. He got after the quarterback. He was doing it all against the Texans, and he continued that against the Dolphins with a few tackles, and he just looks good. He's all over the football field. He's everything they expected and more so far out of that first overall selection for the Carolina Panthers. You look to their second round pick, and that's Amini Solatulu, and he's an offensive tackle that they drafted to come in and start, and he's starting along that offensive line. And so he's a guy that they looked at. He came from a small school, Midwestern State, and so he was a mauler when he was at school, and he's a guy that is dangerous in the run game. The question is, can he be as effective in the passing game as well? The Panthers think so. He's starting, and he's looked good so far. He did have a holding penalty. It happens in the league, but he looked good last night when I was watching him. So that's their second round selection. You move on to their fourth round selections. They had 2 of them. You start with the defensive in out of Oklahoma, Frank Alexander, and he looked good last night. He combined with another defensive end that the Panthers have, and they both are getting their first snaps in the NFL. They combined for three sacks before halftime. Frank Alexander had a sack and a half, and he looked good. And that's another position that you could say is a battle. It really isn't right now. But Greg Hardy is holding down that defensive end spot across from Charles Johnson. And if he doesn't start producing better for the Panthers, they're going to look to replace Greg Hardy. He has not looked good in his preseason. He's even looked lost at times. Frank Alexander has come in, and he's looked really good in his preseason. And so he could threaten to take that spot from Greg Hardy. I don't see it happening right off the bat, but if he continues to produce, because the Panthers need to generate more pressure on the quarterback. They need to get more sacks. He's already gotten a sack and a half in his preseason, and if he can continue to show them that he can get after the quarterback, Greg Hardy has to be careful that his spot is not in jeopardy. Also, the Panthers took in the 4th round wide receiver Joe Adams out of Arkansas. This is a guy that can run. He returned kicks at Arkansas. He's a dangerous weapon, and he's going to probably serve as in some capacity on special teams. Right now, they do have somebody back there already returning in Polaris, returning kicks. But if they can, if they ever get in a pinch and need somebody to return punts or kickoffs, Joe Adams is your man. He's going to add depth there, and he's challenging to get time at receiver. He's right around that 4th position. And if Ajira Tutu doesn't step his game up, he can find himself behind Joe Adams for playing time on the Carolina Panthers roster. So Joe Adams is looking to contribute this year and in multiple facets. You also look at their 5th round selection, Josh Norman. I already spoke about the corner from Coastal Carolina. He's looking to start. They're high on this guy. He's looking to come in and start for the Panthers in his rookie season. I'm not big on rookie corner starting, but if he can come in and show these guys what he can do, and evidently he has done so because they think high enough of him to have him competing for a starting spot, either that speaks to his ability or that speaks to the lack of talent at the corner position for the Panthers. Either way, he's challenging for a starting spot. Even if he doesn't get it, he's going to see the field at some point in this season. And I think that he'll be a guy that's going to get tested because he's a rookie. How will he respond? Either way, he's going to be a better player for it. 6th round pick, and the Panthers took punter Brad Nortman. And normally when you take a punter in the draft or any kind of specialist in the draft, it means you're going to keep him. You're looking for that guy to come in and start for you immediately. So Nortman is someone that they think is going to come in and solidify that punting position for them. And so look for him to be punting for them week 1. 7th round selection, free safety, DJ Campbell out of Cal. Again, the safety position, that whole secondary was an absolute travesty last year. And so anybody who is on the roster, whether you are drafted or undrafted, you have a chance to make this roster if you come in and perform and show the coaches what you can do, because they didn't have a lot of guys last year that got it done on the football field. So if you can come in and show the coaches what you can do, what your value is, you can get a spot. DJ Campbell is someone that can get a spot on the Panthers roster this year because they were lacking at safety last year. As we move into the experiment, I dubbed this experiment Panthers going where? If you've been following the NFL or the Carolina Panthers closely, you heard their Pro Bowl center, Ryan Khalil, come out and say that the Panthers were going to the Super Bowl and going to win the Super Bowl this year. And he took out a full-page ad in the Carolina newspaper telling the fans to support the Panthers this year and that they were going to be rewarded with silver, meaning the Lombardi trophy. And so he essentially assured them of a Super Bowl title if they came out and supported the Panthers this year in the 2012 campaign and quest to just make the playoffs. How about you just make the playoffs first? How about you try doing that? You were 6-10 last year. You weren't 8-8. You weren't 9-7. You weren't a fringe playoff participant or a fringe playoff team that just barely missed the playoffs. You weren't a fringe team that just didn't get in. You were 6-10 last year. So how about you just make the playoffs first before you start talking crazy about winning Super Bowls? So I go on to the research question, and it reads as follows. Can Cam Newton and the Panthers turn the excitement of 2011 into wins in 2012? And that's what it all boils down to, is they were excited. They were hot. They were the team you wanted to see last year. That's fun. That's fine and dandy, but until that fun turns into wins and it translates onto the field into W's and victories, no one cares. Cam Newton, like I said, he electrified the NFL last year, and we took notice. I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't think Cam Newton was going to come in and light it up like that. I knew he could be a dangerous asset, but I didn't know that he was going to come in and be able to pass the football from the pocket as effectively as he did. And so I'm anxious to see what they can do this year, but pump your brakes on the Super Bowl talk. Hypothesis. If Cam Newton and the Panthers offense is as dynamic as it was in 2011 and the defense improves tremendously, then the Panthers can compete for a playoff spot in the NFC. Not out of the realm of possibility. Again, they were a good football team that could have won 10 games if we were just taking the offense into consideration. But we weren't. We had to take the defense into consideration as well. And that defense was good enough for 4 losses last year, which brought them from 10-6 to 6-10. So if this defense can improve tremendously, hey, who knows? Once you get a ticket to the dance and you make it to the playoffs, anything's possible. And so that's what the Panthers have to try and do this year. Make it to the playoffs and then see what happens from there. Materials needed. Are we going to get C. Newton, or are we going to get, is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Super Cam. But we're looking for that Cam right there. The Under Armour Cam, the Super Cam. We're looking for that guy to show up and produce again like he did in 2011. That guy was phenomenal. I've never seen a guy come in and take the league by storm at the quarterback position, doing the things as a dual threat as he did in 2011. And again, we're looking for the same thing out of Cam Newton. It's hard to duplicate what he did in 2011 because he was so spectacular. Those numbers were so earth-shattering. However, he has to be that and more for the Carolina Panthers for them to continue to win football games. Now, he does have a great backfield and a stable of backs. They went out and they also added to the mix Tolbert from the Chargers. And so they have a slew of backs that can get it done in this league. And so he doesn't have to take everything on his shoulders. That running game is going to take pressure off of him. But Cam Newton was so special last year, and that's what made the Carolina Panthers so special last year in terms of offense. And so he has to continue to be that physical specimen on the field that is just hard to stop. No defensive letdowns. The defense was the problem last year. Plain and simple. Again, this team could have won 10 games last year if not for the defense. However, the defense had to play. They played horrible. The team lost games because of it. So the defense has to step up. No defensive letdowns this year. They need to be better in 2012 if the Panthers are going to fulfill the prophecy that Khalil said that the Panthers were going to fulfill, which was winning a Super Bowl this year. New pieces to the puzzle must fit right. Okay, the Panthers have a lot of young guys coming in to fill in positions. We talked about Keechley coming in to play that outside linebacker position. You look at Amini Solatulu, he's going to be playing along that offensive line. He has to come in and assimilate himself well. You got guys along that defensive front coming in. Guys like Ron Edwards on that defensive line, that's a newcomer to the Panthers to help shore up that defensive line to help them stop the run and be better against the run. He looked good last night. He was in the backfield constantly. So these new guys have to come in, assimilate themselves well, and show improvement. Again, you talk about Nakamura from the Ravens coming in to shore up that secondary for the Panthers. They need these guys to step in and step up and fit into fit in as pieces to this puzzle and help the Panthers achieve their goal of making the playoffs and beyond in 2012. You go to cash that check. And you know the old saying, don't write a check that you can't cash. Well, I really think that this check has a lot of zeros and you can't cash this check, Panthers. But you got to back your man's play. If Ryan Khalil says this is what you're going to do, then you got to go out and try to do it. You got to back your players' play. But, hey, that's a big check to cash. But, look, if you don't have lofty expectations for yourself as a team, then who will? You have to have lofty expectations for yourself. If you don't think you're going to win, then how is anyone else supposed to think you're going to win? You need to have that confidence and you need to feel like you can beat anybody, and the Panthers obviously do. And that's how you need to feel. Let's see if they can cash that check. Data. All right, let's get into the numbers that they need to achieve their goal in 2012. Cam Newton needs to have about 3,750 passing yards for 23 to 26 touchdowns, 11 to 13 interceptions, and a 61.3% completion percentage. 690 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Some teams don't even amass 13 rushing touchdowns in a whole season. This man can do it by himself. Last year he had 14 rushing touchdowns by himself. He accounted for 35 touchdowns by himself. 21 passing, 14 rushing. That is an insane number of touchdowns to come from one player, or have him be in some form or some capacity responsible for that many touchdowns in a season, when it's not just all through the air for a quarterback. And those numbers are doable for Cam Newton. They're actually less than the numbers he put up in his rookie season, but I don't expect him to be that great again. And I want him to be more consistent this year. And what I mean by that is he's only had 1 year in the league. This is going to be his second year. So we're looking for consistency. The numbers as far as passing may not go up, but the interception numbers will come down. The touchdown numbers will go up. The completion percentage will go up. And so you're looking for that consistency of him getting better as a quarterback in this league. And so we'll see what he can do in 2012. D'Angelo Williams, 150 to 200 carries for 1,020 to 1,050 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. Jonathan Stewart, he got nicked up last night. That's been a thing on him, is he gets nicked up from time to time. Let's hope it's nothing serious. He was grabbing at that knee, a little worried about it. But we'll see tomorrow what the report is on Jonathan Stewart. But if he can play a full season, that would be a great help to the Panthers. 125 to 165 carries, 960 to 1,010 yards rushing, and 8 touchdowns. You move on to Steve Smith, 72 to 81 catches, 1,070 to 1,120 receiving yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns. Greg Olsen, he's a big part of what they do on offense. Guy that works the middle of the field and is a big target in the red zone. Greg Olsen, 55 to 62 catches, 585 to 655 receiving yards, and 5 to 8 touchdowns. Look for Greg Olsen to be a big part of this offense again in 2012. And the defense, they have to step up. They have to be better. Force 28 to 31 turnovers. That's not a lot of turnovers. It's a lot when you don't get turnovers, but, you know, the elite defense is forced in the mid-30s, upper 30s in turnovers. So, you know, 28 turnovers is not a lot. 31, that's a good number in the NFL. That's a great number in the NFL. They can find a way to get to 30, 31 turnovers. That'd be great for the Carolina Panthers. 42 to 47 sacks. They need to up that sack number. You look for 21 points given up. You look at the 26.8 points they gave up last year. That's way too many. You're asking the Panthers offense to have to score too many points. I want that number scaled down to around 21 points. That's 3 touchdowns. This Panthers offense is more than capable of scoring 3 touchdowns and tacking on a field goal in any given game. And so if they can get that number under 24, preferably at 21, which will put you at 3 touchdowns, This Panthers offense can score more than 3 touchdowns in any given game. And so that will give you chances to win the game in the fourth quarter. This defense has to be better. They made some improvements. I expect this defense to be much better in 2012. You go on to the independent variable, and I mean, the defense is what is holding back this Panthers team again. And so if the Panthers can get this defense to be better, and I mean, they got to stop teams from scoring points on them. Again, that's how I gauge defenses in the league. And the Panthers were 26th in the league last year, giving up 26.8 points a game. If they can lower teams' ability to score, force them to kick field goals, get teams off the field on third down, get more 3-and-outs, force more turnovers, then the Panthers will help that offense with shorter fields, and they'll allow their offense to not have to score 35 points to win a game. Stop having their offense be in shootouts week in and week out. Allow them to win games 21-16. Allow them to win games 19-14. Allow them to win games 24-21. Don't have to have them to win games 27-30 or have to win a game 33-27. Allow them to win games by just scoring enough points and not having to shoot out with people and outscore teams. And that's the dependent variable. If they can find a way to get it done, get sacks, force more turnovers, get teams off the field, get in the red zone, stiffen up, they're going to help the Carolina Panthers offense. In doing so, you help the Carolina Panthers as a whole team because, again, this offense was good enough to win 10 games last year. So if the defense can step up and do their part, because they didn't do their part last year, the offense was holding the team up. If the defense can do their job, get teams off the field, stop teams from scoring touchdowns when they get in the red zone, force them to kick more field goals, lower that point total from a year ago down to something more manageable like 21, like 20. Hey, this Panthers team can be just as dangerous as any team in the league. You go on to constant. And the constant for the Carolina Panthers is Steve Smith. Steve Smith has been a Carolina Panther his whole entire career. And he's been a Panther since 2001. And so he's going into since 2000, he's going into his 12th season as a member of the Carolina Panthers. And he's produced for the Carolina Panthers. And the only time you can say Steve Smith hasn't been at his best is when he's either been injured, as he was in the 2004 season, when he missed all of the season basically with a torn ACL. Or you look back at last year, 2 years ago, 2010, when their quarterback situation was a mess with Matt Moore and Jimmy Clausen. And that's the kind of situation that when you're a veteran and you've been to a Super Bowl, haven't won, and you just want to get back there, it makes the game not fun. It makes playing football hard. And it's supposed to be fun. It's your job. But at the same time, these guys get paid to play a game that they love. It's supposed to be something that they enjoy doing. And I thought Steve Smith 2 years ago in 2010 didn't enjoy the game of football. And rightfully so. Guys, the quarterbacks that he had behind center couldn't get him the football. And so his numbers suffered, and the Panthers as a team suffered because of it. But he persevered through that, and he stuck it through with the Panthers, and he was rewarded with Cam Newton. And now his career has been invigorated. His spirit for the game, his love of the game has been invigorated. And now Steve Smith is that deadly receiver that you don't want to face on a Sunday afternoon, because at any time Steve Smith can get you for an 80-yard touchdown. And Steve Smith is a strength and a constant for the Carolina Panthers. You go on to the conclusion. And the Panthers have called the NFL's bluff this year, the whole entire league. They've said that we're going to win the Super Bowl. And if you're the rest of the league, you laugh at them because you didn't even make the playoffs a year ago. You have a long way to go before you can start making claims like that. And so the Panthers may have a great poker face, but the hand that they have is slightly above average. It's not a great hand. And there are a lot of teams in this league that have a better hand than the Panthers have been dealt. And so the Panthers are going to find themselves trying to take that next step, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to do so this year. I feel like their schedule is extremely hard, and all of this publicity that they're getting, all of this attention that is coming their way might be too much for a young team. It might overwhelm them. And so, again, I have the Panthers going 6-10. Honestly, and this is just looking at the schedule and taking into consideration the offseason and all the things that they have going on in Carolina. I look at them and I see an 8-8, a 9-7 football team. But again, I'm from Missouri. As my dad always says, I'm from Missouri. You have to show me what you're gonna do. And I'm waiting. You got to show me. And I need you to show me that you're not a 6-10 team, as I have said you are. Show me that you're a 7-9 team, a 8-8, or a 9-7 team. You feeling really freaky? You really feeling like your hand is that good? Show me you're a 10-6 team. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. Show me. Make a believer out of me. Cam did last year. Your offense did last year. I need the whole team to make a believer out of me in 2012. And that'll do it for the Carolina Panthers and their lab reporting experiment. On the other side of the break, we'll come back and we'll talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when we come back.
Lab quiz. Lab quiz.
And we're back, and we are back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were they were a joke last year. I got to watch them a couple of times, and they were so bad they were so pitiful you felt bad for them last year. I found myself rooting for them to win games because they were so bad. It was laughable. And so it's good to see that the Glazers finally they're all of a sudden the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are big spenders now. And that's funny in itself because they've been so cheap, so frugal for so long that it's amazing to see them finally pony up and spend some money. And last year was so bad that they decided, hey, look, we got to reach into our pockets and pay some guys, get some talent in here and make some improvements to this team. And I thought that the problem wasn't Raheem Morris. You hear about people talking about the team quit on Raheem Morris and so they fired him. And no, Raheem Morris wasn't the problem. The problem was the way that Raheem Morris came in with this team. He's going to be a coach in this league again. He's good enough to be a coach in this league, and he will be a head coach again in this league. His problem was he was so young, so vibrant, so filled with exuberance that he wanted to be the players' friends instead of being their coach first and foremost. And so I think some of those players on the roster took advantage of Raheem Morris's, I don't want to say kindness. They took it for weakness. I don't want to say that. I want to say that they took advantage of him being such a player's coach. And in the end, I think that's what ended up biting him in the rear end because he was so confident. He was willing to go out on a limb and speak highly of his team. And even when others didn't see it, he was willing to go out on a limb and say, I have the best team in football. No one believed him. And I don't even know if he believed that statement. But he would come out and instill that kind of confidence in his team. But they didn't have any talent last year. Let's just be frank. It wasn't all Raheem Morris. They didn't have any talent. And that's why they went out and spent the money that they did in the offseason because they didn't have talent last year. He didn't have the tools necessary to go out and win football games. You can say, well, they won 10 games the year before. What happened then? They had a soft schedule. They played 10. Their 10 of their wins, 8 of those were against 8 of the worst teams in the league, arguably, that season. And so they won games against teams they were supposed to be. And so I thought that 10-6 record was a fluff. And so you look at that and you say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went out, spent money to get better, and let's see if that yields dividends for them in the 2012 season. Let's get into their strengths. And you talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they were so bad last year, they don't have any strengths. Luckily for them, they went out and spent money and bought a strength. Their strength is left guard Carl Nicks. This is a surefire, can't miss free agent acquisition. He's going to come in and make their offensive line better. Almost to the point where I can argue that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line is a strength. It seemed like when John Gruden was there, he was drafting 7 linemen in the draft every year because he wanted to make sure he could run that ground and pound game out in Tampa, or as they like to call it in Tampa, Bucks ball. He wanted to make sure he had the hogs and the big guys up front to do that. And so it seemed like he drafted 7 linemen every year. Every pick in the draft was a lineman for the Bucks, and so their line is stout. You start from left tackle all the way to right tackle. You go from Donald Penn all the way across to Jeremy Trueblood. Their line is solid. So you could argue that the addition of Carl Nicks makes their offensive line a strength. I guess I'll give you that. Their line is a strength. Carl Nicks is definitely a strength. Their line as a whole, their offensive line is a strength. You go to the weaknesses. Woo! Wow. There are a lot of weaknesses to talk about. I don't have 3 hours to spend on this, so we're going to cut to the core of their weaknesses. You start with Josh Freeman at quarterback. In 2009, I was on the Josh Freeman bandwagon. Here's a guy who came into the league, declared that he was going to make teams who passed on him pay, declared that he was the best quarterback in that draft. And so I was looking for big things from Josh Freeman. That was a big statement because in that 2008 draft, there were 2 quarterbacks taken before him. You had Matthew Stafford going first overall, and you had Mark Sanchez going to the Jets before him. And so him saying he was going to be better than both of those guys, it said a lot, and it showed his confidence that he was oozing, that he was dripping with. And so I was intrigued by Josh Freeman, and I thought that 2009 season where he had 25 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, was a big step for him. And the thing that drew me into him to making me think that this guy could be the franchise quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the way I gauge a quarterback is in that 2009 season, he had about 2 or 3, maybe 4 come from behind victories where he had the ball with less than 2 minutes left in the game and had to drive the length of the field. And he took Tampa Bay down the field for touchdowns to win games. I remember him scrambling out of the pocket and hitting Cadillac Williams in the end zone for a pass that he scrambled out towards the sideline and threw it. And they won that game at the end. And I said, that's what you look for in a quarterback, a guy that's unflappable, who, when the pressure is its greatest at the end of the game and you have to have it, can go and deliver for you. And he did that in 2009. He did the direct opposite in 2000, or excuse me, he did that in 2010. He did the direct opposite in 2011. And he was bad. He was worse than bad. He was horrible. And so a lot of that had to do with the fact that he didn't have any weapons. The Buccaneers did nothing to help him in the offseason of the 2011 season. And so he came in with the same stuff that he had, and I guess they felt good about what he did in that 2010 campaign, and so they went into the 11 season with the same stuff. You weren't playing the same level of competition, though. They stepped the level of competition up, and all of a sudden the Bucs fell back into that slot that they were supposed to be in, which was an ordinary to bad team in this league. And so they had to go out and make the necessary changes. And Josh Freeman has to play better because now the heat is starting to turn up in Tampa Bay. They're starting to question whether he's the guy. This is his 4th season in the league, and 2 out of his 3 seasons have been mediocre to uninspiring football. And so he had that one shining year in 2010, and so he has to play good football this year. I'm looking for big things from Josh Freeman this year because if he doesn't step up, he's going to be looking over his shoulder. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be looking to draft someone to take his spot if he's not careful. And once a team invests a high draft pick in a player, your time for that team is going to be numbered. You're on the clock once that team selects another player of note at a high draft pick. You got to know your time is really limited, and you should be looking behind you at all times. You know, sort of like a Drew Brees with Phillip Rivers. Even though Drew Brees played excellent in that last season for the Chargers, they still were going to get rid of him either way because they invested that high draft pick in Phillip Rivers and they were ready to put him on the field. That'll be the same thing that happens to Josh Freeman if he doesn't produce this year. They'll be looking to add someone on that roster who can come in and compete with him for that starting quarterback position. Let's hope Josh Freeman is not a weakness this time next season. You look at the defense, and let's talk about the running game before we get to the defense. The running game was bad last year, and that in essence helped Josh Freeman be bad last year. He couldn't rely on the running game. The running game was 30th in all of football last year, and so he got no help from his running game. He was constantly in 3rd and 9s, 3rd and longs, and it's hard to complete 3rd and long in this league, especially when defenses know you have to pass the football and they get to pin their ears back and come after you. And so they have to do a better job of running the football, and that's what prompted them to draft Doug Martin, the running back out of Boise State this year with their 1st round selection. You take a look at this defense now. This was the worst of all of their weaknesses. This defense was the type of defense that made you throw up in your mouth. They were horrendous last year, and if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, you could turn the TV when the defense came onto the field because you already knew the outcome. The other team was going to score points. It was just how fast were they going to do it and how bad was it going to look when they did it. And so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were good at one thing last year on the defensive side of football. I got to give credit where credit is due, though. I'll tell you something that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were good at last year. They were excellent at lining up for the PAT attempt after teams scored a touchdown. They got so used to doing that. They were great at lining up for point after touchdown attempts. And they led the league in those. So they were great at lining up for point after attempts. And so you got to give credit where credit is due. They were great at lining up for PATs. But other than that, on defense, they were bad. And that's an understatement. They were putrid. They were an atrocity on the defensive side of the football last year. Let's get into just how bad they were on the defensive side of the football. The Bucs gave up the most touchdowns in the league last year. They gave up 61 touchdowns last year. Yikes. To give you some perspective on how bad that is, the Pittsburgh Steelers were the best in the National Football League at giving up touchdowns. They only gave up 23. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave up 61, almost 3 times as many as the Pittsburgh Steelers. You look at against the pass, they were 21st in the league. You look at against the run, dead last in the league. Okay, you look at sacks, dead last in the league with 23. You look at total defense, 30th in the league. These guys, you look at points per game given up, and this is my measuring stick. You know how I feel about points per game given up. Dead last in the league, giving up 31 points per game. How can you win games? How do they not lose every game giving up 31 points per game? Now, granted, they had a couple of games where they just got absolutely spanked. The 49ers game comes to mind when I think about the games where they just got absolutely manhandled. And those games that are outliers where you give up 45 or 48 points, as they did against the 49ers, that skews the amount of points you give up. But they consistently gave up 30-something points in games last year. And so that 31 points per game that they gave up was adequate. It was an accurate depiction of what that defense was and what they were giving up on defense. And so this defense was historically bad. That was one for the ages. They were terrible on defense last year. And so you can only go up from where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were last year on defense. And so you got to think they're going to be better. They addressed it through free agency, through the draft. And so you got to think these guys have to be better. They can't be too much worse than what they were last year. Camp battles. And surprisingly enough, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a couple of camp battles, neither on the defensive side, though, which is surprising being that they were so inept on defense. But what they chose to do on the defensive side of the football was address it through free agency. You look at the cornerback position. They went out and got Eric Wright, the corner from the Detroit Lions, to help shore up that secondary. And then, they went in the draft and drafted Levante David out of Nebraska. And so he's going to play linebacker, outside linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they went through the draft and via free agency to shore up a lot of their deficiencies. You take a look at the wide receiver position, and that was an issue last year because they didn't get production out of their receivers. They went and got Vincent Jackson. So you take a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they chose to go the route of free agency and the draft to improve their football team. And they made some big splashes in free agency, which is something that's rare for the Bucs. They usually don't spend money in the offseason, but they were so bad last year, they needed to do it, and that's what they did. So the camp battles are, the first one is the running back, the starting running back position. And to me, this isn't really a battle. The first thing Greg Schiano said when he came in was, hey, LeGarrette Blount, if you're going to play running back for me, you're going to hold on to the football. He had a problem doing that last year. He fumbled quite a bit in the 2011 season. And so the coaching staff for the Bucs made it known, look, we're not tolerating fumbles, turnovers, unnecessary turnovers, and change up possessions that put the defense in a bad spot. And so that let me know right there that what he saw on film from LeGarrette Blount was good, but he wasn't enamored. He wasn't overly impressed with what he saw. And then pretty much the nail in the coffin in terms of who was going to start came when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers climbed back into the first round and drafted Doug Martin, the running back out of Boise State. And that solidified it for me that, hey, we like this guy so much that we're coming back into the first round to get him. And he's going to be the guy that we look to carry the rock for us, primarily in the 2012 season. Of course, LeGarrette Blount is going to get his share of carries. But Doug Martin, to me, is the unquestioned starter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the running back position. LeGarrette Blount is going to get his fair share of carries, and he's going to get his own share of the workload. But Doug Martin is a guy that they traded up for, and they drafted to come in and start as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back in the 2012 campaign. So I expect him to start. You look at the third wide receiver position, and that's available. Your two starters are going to be Mike Williams and, of course, the aforementioned Vincent Jackson, who they acquired through free agency this year. And so that third receiver spot is between Preston Parker, a guy that Josh Freeman felt like he could trust last year. He went to Preston Parker quite a bit, especially on third downs, and he delivered. And so he was sort of a safety blanket for Josh Freeman last year. So Preston Parker is in the mix, and also Aurelius Ben. And this is a guy that I like a lot and think that he has potential that he has to tap into and start to show the Buccaneers that he's a guy that can produce if given the opportunity to, and he was given the opportunity to produce last year, and he didn't run with that opportunity. Maybe he's not a starter, but maybe he's a slot guy in this league. We'll see. But he's progressed each year slowly. Maybe this is a breakout season for Aurelius Ben in the slot if he can win that position. I think the Bucs like Preston Parker a lot. I like Aurelius Ben even more. I don't know who's going to get that position. This third preseason game will be telling who, when they come out, that first time they come in a 3 wide receiver set, who's that guy out in the slot. That's going to be very telling for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 2012 season to see who wins that battle, because slot guys are important for quarterbacks. Just like tight ends are important for offense and important for the quarterback, slot guys are just as important, because a lot of times on third downs, they're out in space and they get to make moves to pick up first downs. So you move on to the rookie watch. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 2 first-round selections. We've talked about both. Well, we've talked about one of them. Their first selection that they had in the draft was safety Mark Barron out of Alabama. And I thought that the comment that Mike Mayock made on him speaks volumes as to how productive he can be in this league. Mike Mayock said, the ceiling on this guy is that he's a Pro Bowl safety in this league. The floor on this guy is that he's a Pro Bowl safety in this league. So that lets you know he's a can't-miss prospect. He's going to come in, shore up that safety position, which was a problem last year. The reason why the Bucs were among the worst teams on defense last year is because they didn't tackle well. And what was alarming is that I watched the Bucs again tonight against Tennessee. They didn't tackle well again. And if you're a Bucs fan, that has to be alarming, because that was one of the biggest reasons why you were one of the worst teams on defense last year, is that people got into your second level, your third levels, and guys weren't able to wrap them up and bring them down, and that led to big plays. And so as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, you got to hope that Mark Barron can come in, not only provide big plays in that secondary, but just make the routine plays. It's something to be said in this league for just doing your job and making the routine play. How about you just tackle somebody? When they catch a pass for 8 yards, tackle them at that 8-yard mark. How about not letting them get away and make that a 17-yard gain on 3rd and 11? How about making that an 8-yard gain on 3rd and 11? Those are the simple things. Those are the things that get you off the field on 3rd down. Those are the things that make you a better defense. Those are the things that make you a better team. You look at Doug Martin. We've talked about him. Running back, Boise State. Another first-round selection. The Bucs traded back up into the first round to get him. He's going to start for the Bucs game 1, and they're hoping that he's a workhorse that they can give the football to. And he's a guy that's multi-talented. He can do different things out of the backfield. He can not only run the football. He can catch it out of the backfield. And he comes in as a polished pass protector as well. So you get every facet of Doug Martin's game on display immediately, and you're hoping it pays dividends if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. Second-round selection, Levante David, the linebacker out of Nebraska. He's a steady guy. He's always around the football. He's a football player. And the Bucs knew this was a need, and they went out and drafted Levante David, and they're going to plug and play this guy day 1. And they're hoping that he comes in and is the playmaker, is the steadying force that he was at Nebraska for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You look at the 5th-round selection that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did, another linebacker. They were bad at linebacker last year. They were terrible at linebacker. So they selected Najee Good, the linebacker out of West Virginia, and he's going to get a lot of playing time. Not necessarily start right away, but he's going to get a lot of playing time at that linebacker position. And it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up starting as well, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were so bad on defense last year. They need all the help that they can get. You look at their next selection in the 6th round, and they had a pick, and they drafted Keith Tandy, the cornerback out of West Virginia. Keith Tandy is another guy going to come in and help this secondary. They like what he can do. He's a versatile player. He can play every position in the secondary. He can be a corner, as they drafted him to be. He can be a free safety. He can be a strong safety. Whatever you need Keith Tandy to do, he can do it. And they love his versatility. And so he's not only going to make the roster, he's probably going to see the field for the Tampa Bay Bucks in the 2012 season. 7th round selections, they had 2. Running back Michael Smith. This guy has played his way onto the roster in the preseason. Initially, when they drafted him, I thought it was a depth pick, a guy that would probably make the roster, the practice squad, and try to make the roster in the future by just clinging on to the practice squad and getting his feet wet that way. No, sir. This guy's come in the preseason and earned a roster spot via the return game. He's shown speed, and he had speed. They knew he had speed to burn. They put him back there to return kickoffs, and he's done nothing but help himself. Last night, he had a 74-yard kick return. Got the Tampa Bay Bucks some prime field position that they did absolutely nothing with. But you love to have the ability to get good field position. And in the first game, he had a good return as well. So he's helping himself. He is playing himself onto the roster. There's 2 more games remaining. If he continues to show these Tampa Bay Buccaneer coaching staff that he adds an element to this team that they don't currently have, I can't see how they can keep Michael Smith, the running back out of Utah State, their 7th round selection, off their team. Also, Drake Dunsmore, tight end. Again, that's going to be depth. He's probably not going to make the team. He's going to have to find a way onto the practice squad and go from there. That's a depth pick, a guy that they're looking to probably work with and bring along, and hopefully he'll pan out for something down the road. As you go into the experiment, I dubbed this experiment, man, what the buck? What the buck is going on, man? And if you're a Bucks, if you're a Bucks fan, that's what you have to be saying to yourself. What the buck, man? What is going on? What the buck is going on, man? These guys are terrible. Last year, at times they were unwatchable. And it was bad on both sides of the ball. A lot of times when you're not a good football team, one side of the ball is worse than the other, and you look forward to your offense getting the ball if your defense stinks, or vice versa. Your offense stinks, and your defense is on the field, and they keep you in games. You don't win games because your offense isn't good, but your defense gives you opportunities to stay in ball games. That wasn't the case with the Bucks. They were equally bad on both sides of the football, and so there weren't many opportunities for them to win football games last year. And so I thought that title was fitting for this Tampa Bay Bucks team, and new head coach Greg Schiano has come in, and he's going to instill a different type of mindset on his team. And we'll talk about him here shortly. Let's get into the research question. With all the improvements to his surrounding cast, will Josh Freeman prove he is the man at quarterback to lead this franchise? And is the Bucks defense ready to not be the absolute worst in the league? Hypothesis. If Josh Freeman can build chemistry with the skill guys that they have acquired over the offseason and the guys that he already had, and his defense is light years better, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can begin to move in the right direction. I think that this is a make-or-break season for Josh Freeman. I like Josh Freeman. I want him to succeed. I like his game. He's a big, tall, strong man that in the pocket it has a presence about him that he can get it done. And he's shown me in the past that when the pressure is its greatest, he can perform. He can rise. And so he's got weapons now. There's no excuse. The offensive line in front of him is more than adequate. They're actually probably a strength on this team. So he needs to perform. This running game needs to get on track to allow him to use play action fake to push the ball down the field. Vincent Jackson is a big play route receiver. If they can get the running game going and Josh Freeman not turn the ball over, make smart decisions, read the defense. Last year, I wasn't sure if he was reading the defense at times. And he looked confused a lot of times, and that's why he threw 22 interceptions last year. He needs to read defenses, make the smart decision. If it's not there, check it down, live to fight another down. If he can play smart football, this defense be better. Again, they're in a division where teams go from worst to first. It's not out of the realm of possibility to think that the Bucs could come in and do something crazy. Yes, it is out of the realm of possibility. But everybody has hope this time of season. Who am I to shoot down anybody's dream? All right, you move on to materials needed. Schiano shakedown. And this was needed. Again, I didn't think that Raheem Morris was the problem by himself, but he was part of the problem in Tampa Bay. And the reason why he was part of the problem was because he was a player's coach to a fault. He was too nice to those guys. When you're a head coach, what you want to do is come in and lay the hammer down. Lay it down. Lay the hammer down. Let players know you're in charge and that you're not going to take anything less than their best. If they can't give that to you, you have to go. And so Schiano has come in with a hard-nosed, tough approach. And that's what the Bucs needed. They needed a guy to come in and be a disciplinary. Someone that's not going to stand for any of the shenanigans that had been going on for the last 2 years under Raheem Morris. And not to say that the inmates were running the asylum when Raheem Morris was the coach. But like I said, he was just too nice. They needed more discipline. That's a young football team, the Tampa Bay Bucs are. They are a young football team. When you're young and you're just coming from college and you're 23, 24 years old, you need discipline instilled to show you how to be a pro football player. You don't need somebody trying to be your friend. And I think that's where Raheem Morris went wrong. Greg Schiano, he's been dealing with college players. He just came from the college ranks. He knows that these guys are still immature. A lot of them are when they're this young. And so you got to instill in them how to be a professional, how to have work ethic, how to bring your lunch pail to work every day. And so Greg Schiano has come in and he's laid down a foundation that I think is going to help the Bucs in this 2012 season and moving forward. He's what the Bucs need. And so let's see if his approach to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers gets it done in the 2012 season. You move on. Josh Freeman, be the man. You have to step up, Josh. This is it. Honestly, I think that if you don't get it done this year, you'll still be on the roster next year. But they'll draft somebody to take your place. And once they do that, the clock is ticking. At that point, you know it's a formality whether you'll be out as Tampa Bay Buccaneers starting quarterback or not. It won't be a matter of if, it'll be when. If you step up this year, they'll bypass that quarterback next year and focus on needs to help the team get better to take that next step in that current season. But if you suffer, if you have another setback this year, they're going to go after that quarterback early on next year to replace you. And you'll be looking for more work. You'll be wondering where your next job will be in the league. And I think you can be a starter in this league. You have to be the man this year, Josh Freeman. Free agents, prove your worth. The Bucs went out and spent a boatload of money, as they should have. They had the most money in free agency to spend before it started because they're so cheap and they didn't spend money over the last 2-3 seasons. So they had a boatload of money to spend, and boy, did they spend it. Vincent Jackson, Carl Nix, and so they also acquired Eric Wright from the Lions, and so at cornerback. So they went out and they spent money this all season. And these guys have to come in and prove their worth every penny. Carl Nix, no doubt in my mind, he's going to come in and hold down that left guard position. That's not even something they have to worry about now. Him next to Donald Penn, they could have one of the more dominating left sides in all of football. The question you have to ask is Eric Wright worth the money? He was a starter in Detroit, but you know what? Eric Wright really didn't move me. He didn't move me. He didn't do much for me in Detroit. He was okay in Detroit, but cornerback is a position that is hard to find Pro Bowl type players and guys that have the ability to be a difference maker. And so I'm not saying Eric Wright is that guy, but it's hard to find those guys. So even if you find a guy that's a second tier, third tier type corner, if it's an upgrade on your team, you have to take it because, again, it's so hard to find corners who have experience that can play in the National Football League and be consistent. And so if nothing else, Eric Wright is around the football. He's not always going to make plays, but he's always around the football. And so the Bucs are going to look to him to step in across from Aqib Talib and be somebody that makes plays, hopefully, for them. And if nothing else, gets stops on third and long and gets the defense off the field. They couldn't do that last year. So, you add that. Vincent Jackson's a big play guy. He's going to continue to be that. If the Bucs can get him the ball down the field, he's going to make plays. He's a big, long, tall guy that can jump, and he's fast. He has all the attributes. He's done it. He's done it in his league before. He'll continue to do it for Tampa Bay if they can get him the football. But these guys have to prove their worth. Dead weight, walk the plank. And this is another facet that I thought that Greg Schiano came in and did a great job of. He let guys know, if you're dead weight on this team, I have no ties to you. I didn't bring you in as a free agent, so I didn't see what other coaches saw in you to bring you and put you on this roster. I will cut you. See Desmond Briscoe, a guy that they came in, and he scored 6 touchdowns. He was an asset to the Bucs last year. He wasn't working hard enough. They didn't see the promise there. They got rid of him. Next man up. And that's what you have to do to send a message to your football team when you're coming in as a first-year coach. I'm not standing for anybody that's not going to give me 110% at all times. If you're going to play for this football team, you're going to represent us the right way on the field, and you're going to do everything in your power to get better at your job and make us a better football team. And if you can't do that, go walk the plank. And I think that's what you have to do as a first-year coach. Set the tone in the locker room that anything less than your best will not be tolerated. And you'll be packing up your bags and getting out of town on the first ticket out of Tampa Bay. And that's what Schiano has done. So he's got guys walking the plank if they're not giving their all and they're not buying into the program out in Tampa Bay. The buck stops here. If you're the defense, the buck has to stop here. You can't continue to be a laughingstock on defense in the National Football League. You can't give up 31 points a game. That is insane. That is mind-boggling. That is incomprehensible that you could give up 31 points a game. And for them to have even won 5 games or 4 games or whatever it was they won last year, that's amazing. Because 31 points a game, that's hard to do, especially when you're the Bucs and you're not even scoring up over 20 points a game yourself. So the fact that they were able to win games, giving up that many points, bravo, hand clap for you for winning 5 or 4 games, giving up 30. The buck has to stop here. If you're the defense, you have to represent your team better. You have to pull your own weight. You have to be better. You can't be as bad as you were in the 2011 season. The buck has to stop here if you're the defense. Data. Josh Freeman needs to have 3,650 passing yards, 21 to 24 touchdowns, 9 to 11 picks, and 62.5% completion percentage. Josh, you got to step up, man. I'm in your corner. I'm in this with you. You got to do it this year. There's no excuses. The line in front of you is better. The running backs behind you are better. The receivers out wide are better. Get it done this year. Vincent Jackson, 60 to 67 grabs, 1,020 to 1,060 receiving yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns. They need you to be that big play guy in this offense. Go up and make plays. Josh Freeman, give him a chance to go up and make plays. If you do so, Vincent will make them. Doug Martin, they're looking for you to come in and tote the rock, buddy. 225 to 250 carries, 880 to 975 to 1,050 rushing yards, 5 to 7 touchdowns. You might even have more touchdowns than that because I can see you being a receiving threat out of the backfield as well. Whatever the case may be, step up, be the guy that they need you to be in the run game first and foremost. Then catch the ball out of the backfield and make things happen in the passing game. And when they ask you to block, stick your nose in there and stand and stonewall linebackers and safeties. LeGarrette Blount. Let's hope that groin injury that you suffered tonight is not serious. Let's hope it's not a torn groin or something like that. Let's just hope it's a strain. And if you come back and can play 14 to 16 games, I'm looking for 180 to 200 carries, 880 to 910 yards rushing, 4 to 6 touchdowns. They need you. They need your production on the field. You weren't terrible last year, but you weren't good either. But you were by yourself. You had no help. That line did not open up holes. And so, the run like you had against Green Bay, you're capable of doing that. And so you have to step up and be a guy that they can rely on when you're in the game. Stop fumbling. Bucs defense. Forced 30 to 34 turnovers. 30 to 33 sacks. You had 23 sacks last year. How do you even do that? How do you just get 23 sacks? I mean, teams who don't get after the quarterback stumble into 27 sacks. How do you only get 23 sacks? I mean, that means your line didn't get pressure because let's just say your defensive line by themselves had 16 sacks. Let's say every player on your D-line that started for you had 4 sacks apiece. That's 16 sacks. Are you telling me the remaining 7 players on defense can't get more than 7 sacks? Is that what you're saying to me? That's hard to stomach. Hard to fathom that you only were able to muster up 23 sacks. You have to be better. And maybe Gerald McCoy's injury had something to do with that. But I don't think that was the end-all be-all. You just didn't get to the quarterback last year. Get to the quarterback, man. 30 to 33 sacks. That has to come up. 22.4 points a game. You got to come way down from 31 a year ago. To be exact, you gave up 30.9 points last year. Round that up to 31. That's 4 touchdowns and a field goal. You can't give up 4 touchdowns and a field goal and think you're going to win football games. Not happening. Scale that back. 22.4 points a game is a little bit over 3 touchdowns. That's still a lot of points. But when you were giving up 31 and you come down at 22.4, that's a major improvement. And again, your team will have opportunities to win games if you can keep teams from scoring more than 3 touchdowns a game. 7 to 9 plays of 40 yards given up. You gave up 12 of them last year in the passing game. Can't have it. You're not good enough on offense. You're not good enough on defense to do that. You have to make teams methodically drive the ball down the field because you never know what's going to happen. A turnover could happen. A penalty could happen. That forces, that changes the complexion of a drive. Stop allowing teams to get big plays and score quickly and make them drive the ball down and score on you. Don't allow them to get big plays and score on you. On to the independent variable, and the Bucs were terrible on defense last year. We talked about it at great lengths. Fix it. The dependent variable is if they fix some of the problems. They had so many. No sacks. Last in points given up. Last in amount of touchdowns given up. 24th in pass defense. 25th in rush defense. We talked about all of that. 28th overall. Be better on defense. If you're better on defense, you're going to give your football team a chance to win. Force more turnovers. You weren't that bad in that you got 24 turnovers last year. That number can go up slightly. You got to feel good about that. Getting to the quarterback, though, more will force more turnovers in itself, whether it be via fumble that you force by hitting the quarterback or by forcing errant throws because of your pressure. Either way, getting to the quarterback is the answer to getting more turnovers. Getting to the quarterback is the answer to getting off the field on third down. Getting to the quarterback is the answer to stopping teams from scoring 31 points on you. Getting to the quarterback is the answer from giving up 61 touchdowns in one season. Get to the quarterback more often. Good things will happen for you if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it'll help your offense with shorter fields, more possessions, more opportunities to put points on the scoreboard and give you a chance to win the football game. Again, the constant. If you've been watching Tampa Bay Buccaneers football for any amount of time, I mean, we're talking the last decade and a half, maybe even more. If you've been watching the Tampa Bay Bucs play football, then you know who the constant is. If you haven't been watching them, then you don't know who the constant is. And I will tell you, it is Rondé Barber. He's been a warrior for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a playmaker at that. He's an argument that could be made to make the Hall of Fame because some of the numbers he has are numbers that no one else in NFL history can lay claim to. He makes plays, and not only does he make plays, he scores touchdowns in the process of making plays. He has well over 20 turnovers forced, in whether it's fumble recoveries or interceptions. And I venture to think that he might have over 20 touchdowns scored in his career. That might be a little bit preposterous to think. But he's up there. He got a lot of touchdowns that he scored in the course of his career. He's been a playmaker for the Bucs, and they moved him over officially to safety. He's been playing a lot in the slot and at safety already, but he officially has been moved to safety this year, much like Charles Woodson. He's a playmaker. And when he's on the field, he's a guy that you have to watch out for because he's a veteran that is savvy enough to know where to be to create turnovers, but he can't do it by himself. And so these corners have to play good football. You know, Mark Barron has to learn from him and play off of Rondé Barber. And they could be a good tandem back there, but everything takes time. And Rondé Barber has been a consistent player and is the constant for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Moving along to the conclusion. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a work in progress. And the situation is fluid because with a new head coach, there's always things that have to be addressed and new things are implemented. You know, you have to get used to his coaching style, his style of play, you know, his scheme, his way of doing things. And so he's a breath of fresh air for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think he's the right man for the job right now. But if they buy into his system right now, they could be a 7-9, 8-8 team this year. You know, who's to say that they don't come out, you know, like world beaters and take the league by storm? And I say that, and when I mean by take the league by storm, I'm not talking 10-6, 11-5. I'm talking 8-8. That's a big improvement for them if they can do that. Because I don't think there are much expectations for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year. And if they can find a way to get into 7-9, 8-8, that's a huge leap and a win for Greg Schiano and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I don't see that happening. And like I said, the situation is fluid, so anything can happen. They could take to Greg Schiano and his coaching and his style of play and his system, and they could go out and turn some heads and win 7 or 8 games this year. Or they could do what everybody expects them to do. Be slow to picking up what it is Greg Schiano is trying to do. You know, they're going to have growing pains. They're a young football team. He's a new head coach. And everybody's got to feel each other out. It's a feeling out process. And so you're going to have to take your lumps in that process. And that's what I have them doing, taking lumps and going 2-14 this season. I don't see a lot of wins on their schedule. But the Buccaneers are a team that if you allow them to hang around a football game, they will beat you. And so if this defense can find a way to keep the Bucs in the game, who knows? 6, 7, 8 wins is definitely attainable. But everybody has to do their job, and everybody has to do their job adequately, and Greg Schiano has to be a good football coach and do the things necessary before Sunday and on Sunday, including in-game management, to help the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get to where they want to be moving forward. Now, he's the coach for the Bucs now, and I think he's the right man for the job now. But in 3 years, he might not be the right man for the job. Like I said, this situation is fluid. So we'll see what he brings to the table. And that's going to do it for the lab report for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's going to be a touchdown. Throw him up. And so you look at the NFL and the preseason, and I'm going to tack this quick extra point on. The Redskins play tonight, and I'm anxious to see what they're going to do. This is Robert Griffin III's second game in the league. Alfred Morris, the Redskins running back, is getting the start at running back. And, I want to see the Bears are playing all of their parts tonight. Jay Cutler, Julius Peppers, Matt Forte, Brandon Marshall, they're all playing tonight. So I want to see what the defense looks like, because they got a lot of improving to do. And so that's going to be a game I keep an eye on. Also, the Cowboys are playing the Chargers tonight. The Jets are playing the Giants tonight. These are all games that are worth keeping an eye on and seeing what these teams are doing around the football landscape. And so there's a lot to watch over this weekend, and there'll be a lot to talk about come Monday, which will be the next time I will see you. And so enjoy the weekend and all of the football that will be on display. Take notes because we'll be talking about it in the lab room on Monday's episode. And, hit me up in the inbox, in the lab room at gmail.com. Like me on Facebook, in the lab room, Twitter handle, in the lab room. I'm here. I'm going to be here. Let's enjoy this thing and let's have fun doing it. I'll see you on Monday. Same time, same place. I'm out.